Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Holliston Public Schools School Committee meeting. It is 7:30 p.m. We are returning from executive session, and all members are present. I'm going to start. I'm actually going to skip minutes and just start with our oral communications first, and then go to minutes, if that's okay with everybody else. Does anyone from the school committee have an individual comment they would like to make? Okay, seeing none. I actually have a couple of comments that I would like to make. Let me start with this one. Okay. The school committee and school administration would like to publicly thank the select board for their ongoing support of the schools throughout the pandemic. Most recently, the select board approved our request to apply $533,646.24 to CARES funding. As we reflect on the past year, one of the real positives that came out of this horrible pandemic has been the strengthening partnership between our two boards and the departments underneath them. We believe that the need to work very closely together for the benefit of the students of Holliston has strengthened our relationships and further opened lines of communication. When the school committee made this request, we knew this amount was more than the amount currently available in the fund. However, Chief Cassidy was able to authorize these funds within the FEMA rules for reimbursement, which made this request and subsequently the select board's vote to support it possible. In addition, the school committee and the school administration would like to publicly thank the finance committee for their ongoing support of the schools during the pandemic. Through ongoing collaboration at meetings during the onset of the pandemic and frequent check-ins to ensure that we had the resources to keep the doors open and the staff and students safe, the Finance Committee demonstrated their willingness to be a valued partner in good times and in bad. We greatly appreciate the committee's approval of one-time funds to purchase new Chromebooks for our 5th grade students. And then I have one other comment to make. Some residents in town have received a letter from an unnamed person with a P.O. box in Holliston claiming that the school committee plans to teach critical race theory K through 12 this fall. This is patently false. In addition, there is a Facebook group that includes a link to a web page claiming to be the school committee and a job description that are both fraudulent. For information on the Holliston School Committee's agendas, minutes, and other items of information, please see the Holliston Public Schools website, holliston.k12.ma.us. Critical race theory is a legal theory coined in the 1970s by Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, Cheryl Harris, Richard Delgado, and others as an approach to understand the role of law in society, specifically the role of racial inequality. CRT is not included in teacher training programs, nor is it included in the K through 12 Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. And that's all I have for tonight. And Dr. Kuska or Joni, do you have anything?
I do have one exciting comment to make. Demolition started today on our new turf field, and it arrives on August 9th. The project will hopefully be completed on August 20th, depending on weather, but no later than hopefully August 27th. I do have a couple of pictures. I can either send them to you or share them with you on the screen, but up to you.
Do you mind sharing them?
Sure. I will, by email, I'll send them out to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you can share
on the screen. Okay.
I think people want to see that we're doing some work on the fields.
Sounds good.
Pretty important.
So can you see that one?
Oh, nice.
And one more. So there they are, getting the ground rolling up the turf.
That's so great. That's been a long time coming. I'm so excited for that. Nobody more than Ms. Naborski, though, I think. Minnie, did you have something?
Yes, I actually had a public comment to make, but I think I was too slow to...
I'm so sorry. I didn't see. Go right ahead.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to Akshara Shankar for donating, or rather winning, the scholarship for Stephen J. Brady Hunger Scholar as a hunger scholar, and she's donating $5,000 to Holliston Food Pantry, and I think that's an awesome thing for a high schooler to do. So I just wanted to give a shout out.
Thank you. That is exciting. Yay! Everybody give a clap for Akshara. She's in my daughter's class. Okay. All right, so we will, I don't have anybody no one had pre-registered for public comment. Central office is already gone. Okay, so I'm going to move to minutes. Does anyone have any questions, comments, amendments to the April 8th, 2021 regular session minutes? Okay, does anybody have any comment, question, amendment to the April 29th, 2021 regular session minutes? No. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or amendments for the May 6th, 2021 regular session? Lisa?
Yeah, I'm looking for the one. I had sent an email to Lisa Aronian.
I saw that.
I just wanted, and I wanted to just make sure it got corrected. I don't know that it did, but there was just a misspelling of a proper name.
Okay. Oh, I remember that. I don't remember which minutes that was, though.
I don't either. I'm trying to look for it right now. Sorry.
That's okay. I remember you sent it, but I didn't remember which one it was in reference to. Oh, here it is. It's from the May 6th.
Okay.
So is it, okay. So did you send that to Lisa?
Yeah. So I just don't know. I don't know if it got corrected already. I don't know if you have the latest version or not.
Well, it would have been in our packet. So if the packet, I don't have anything different from what's in our packet.
Okay, so there's no living Google Doc. Okay, so
no,
I guess just need to make sure that gets
okay. Corrected. Okay, let me make a note of that. So May 6th. Say. All right, I'll email her after. Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 8th, 2021 regular session, the April 29th, 2021 regular session, and the May 6th, 2021 regular session as amended?
Do we?
Motion to approve, sorry.
I said move.
Sorry, move. Okay. Moved by Catherine.
Seconded by Stacy.
Seconded by Stacy. Roll call vote. Dr. Savard.
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi.
Yes.
Ms. Bigelow.
Yes.
Ms. Naborski.
Yes.
Ms. Gupta.
Yes.
Ms. Koshin.
yes.
And Mrs. Listevnik, yes. Okay, thank you. All right, and now we will move to, I'll make sure I'm not jumping or skipping anything, our discussion about the ARPA request for proposals, which is due August 2nd, that we need to, it's a soft deadline that we need to vote on. So Lisa, do you want to start us off on some discussion we had at the budget subcommittee about this?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump right in. There are two proposals that Dr. Kuska made that we reviewed, and I'll just name them and then she can go into more detail. But
yes, of course.
She proposed a funding full day K out of ARPA funds 100% the first year. And then the second year, 75%, 25%, so 25% coming out of our operational budget and so on. And I'll let her go into detail about what that would look like. And then the second proposal is to put aside money for before and after school support in both academics and social emotional learning. This would be for kids from October to May and twice a week. And again, I'll let her go into detail. This is her proposal. Yep. That is the only proposal that we voted on as a budget subcommittee to recommend. So we unanimously voted to recommend that we put that forward to the steering committee / the select board for their approval. And it would also include, it's about $106,000 estimated. It's $40,000 for the actual support, and then another $66,000 estimated for transportation. And we thought that was important to add.
It is.
I think it was Dawn that brought that up originally and asked that question. We need to, make sure there's equity in support. If we're going to close the gaps, obviously it's really important to close the gaps for everybody who needs it. So I'm going to so again, that was the only one that we were unanimous in recommending and supporting, and I'll let Susan flesh that one out. Full day kindergarten, we had a lot of questions about, and but we weren't going to not recommend it, of course. We want the whole school committee to have a discussion on that, because there are obviously a lot of pros to it, but there were a lot of questions that we had to, especially about what happens in years 3 and 4.
Mhm.
And then some of the other items we talked about were just social emotional supports in general. We all had questions about, are we doing enough in terms of social emotional support? And we talked about if we could use, there's a provision in there that says essential workers the ARPA money can be used for essential workers for premium pay. And we had a lot of questions around that as to whether school staff could be included in that. And the short answer is we don't know yet. So we have been asking, the budget subcommittee asked a lot of questions about who qualifies as an essential worker and how would that work? But that's something, obviously we want to support our school staff in any way we can. And we so appreciate what they have done for us this past year under harrowing circumstances and what they continue to do for us. So these are questions that we're going to continue to ask. But it was a little, nothing is straightforward with federal government money. So, and I feel like there was one other bucket that we discussed. I mean, in general, we discussed whether or not we were doing enough to fill the gaps to support students who need help in recovering from the pandemic. And Dawn, what was the other one?
So there was an additional something I wanted us to look further in. First off, the ARPA funds are available for something like 4 years. So this is not right away, but we do have a septic system that is about thousands of people. And if this were to fail in November, December, January under a foot of snow, we would have some problems. So there is a provision within this funding about public works projects. So that was just something I wanted to look into, which was, would that be an appropriate use of this? Because I think it is it could be a short-term need, it could be a longer-term need for the school. But I think that that Mr. Boudet, in conjunction with the town administrator, and had some ideas about just looking into that. So that's something probably not for now as much for discussion, but it is something we're continuing to explore and get more information on.
Right. And also there was a lot of discussion about, what is the classification and how does that change for essential workers, for example? What does that do in terms of when you're classified as an essential worker and the implications of that? And I think we need to explore that more before we can move forward with that, because there are a lot of implications for that in the sense that, if they're essential worker, that means you have to come to work no matter what, under whatever circumstances are. And so we just need to look into that more fully.
But several pages of I'm getting a bad echo. Sorry. There were several pages of guidelines on how to use ARPA funds. And as a subcommittee, we really dug into that and tried to think of, what the possibilities were and is there anything we're missing? And we had a philosophical discussion about, what do we want to use this money for? How do we best serve all the students of Holliston? How do we best serve the school district? And I guess it would have been nice if we could have come to you with a specific recommendation and, put a bow on it, but it ended up, we felt like we needed to have the discussion, aside from that one item that was easy for us to support, the rest of it, we felt like we had to have a discussion with the full committee, because it's a lot of money. We only have it for 3 years. It's an opportunity. It represents, a lot and a lot of decisions. And so we felt like it was more appropriate to have it at the full committee level.
So go ahead, Stacey.
I just want to be careful. We got to be really careful about the narrative about ARPA. It is funds that the town through the select board will designate. So I just want to be really careful when we talk about how much we're looking at it. I don't want people to think the schools are going to go and plan to spend this $3 or $4 million. So you just want to be really mindful of that because that can turn into a narrative out in the public that.
Right. That's very important. Thank
Before
you, Stacey.
people take to social media, it
Right, I
is
know.
not, it is not our decision. We will make a recommendation, and it is in the purview of the select board.
Right. So it goes to the steering group, and then the steering group then makes recommendations to the select board, and the select board is the ultimate decider on that. Dawn?
And there's only a certain allotment for this year, and it is spread out over a number of years. But obviously, as your school committee, we are all going to be advocating. We know how hard hit our students have been, how hard hit our educators have been, what COVID has done to the schools. So that's why I think it's so important for us to look at these 4 areas and continue to advocate for the schools and for the use of these resources over the next few years. But it's not just a one-time ask either.
No, of course not. Yep. Now I'd just like Dr. Kostka to explain the request that she is making for us to consider.
Before that, could I please request you guys to mute because the echo is awful.
Okay, so I'll do the one that's the quicker one to discuss the ask for before and after school additional hours for students that we're going to identify in the fall. We have STAR literacy and math testing in place, which I requested that we purchase last year because we know we need to do some more benchmarking of our students, particularly with the COVID learning gaps. So we did some piloting of that in the spring, and we have some data around some grade levels and some students of, some of the gaps that we're concerned about, students that aren't meeting grade level proficiency. But we weren't able to do it for all grade levels because of the late time of year that we were able to get that pilot started. So in the early fall, Joni and I are going to be working this retreat with our administrative team, August 10th and 11th. We're going to be putting together a calendar of assessment dates and timeline specifically for things like STAR, which will be done 3 times a year, but it will be done early in the fall because we'll use that data to identify students that are struggling in literacy and numeracy. However, we also need to capture the SEL piece for students. We're hoping to put together some support groups for social emotional learning, in addition to some of the academic needs of students for the fall in multiple grade levels. One of the things that we talked about today that I know Lisa and Dawn, I think you both brought up the concern that are we doing enough to address these areas? And I discussed how one of the reasons we really fought hard for the director of SEL and equity position is year 1, we've asked Jariel Vernay to focus specifically on SEL, even though the position is SEL and equity, and it's definitely an umbrella of an overlap. When you work on equity in a district, it improves social emotional learning. And, they kind of go hand in hand that way. And he sees those as very seamless as well. But because we have Khalees Warner working with us on some of the anti-bias and anti-racist work and just working on unconscious bias in the district overall, we are asking Jariel to focus specifically on SEL. And a lot of his work this year will be working with our adjustment counselors and counselors to develop intervention programs for Tier 2 and Tier 3 that are pre-K to 12. Right now, we're not using a specific program, and we still may not, but to develop some specific areas to address pre-K to 12 and put more training in place. So he'll be supporting staff with that. That is during the daytime. One of the concerns I have as you get into the upper levels, into middle school and high school, they have a lot of extracurricular after school activities as well as sports. So if you start to offer after school programming in the older grades, now we're competing against them going to these activities. So our optimal time for all students is during the school day, but specifically with the older ones, if we put too much in the afternoon, getting them to do that and giving up something else to do so will be problematic. So I really think we're going to try to focus on working on Tier 2 and 3 interventions, pre-K to 12, but then trying to give some additional interventions for the younger kids should be easier. At Placentino, we happen to have a later start time. So this time in the morning that might work out for that age group. So we're exploring all of this. And it doesn't mean we might not propose some more interventions before or after school in other grade levels. But right now we're working on, I think we said, Joni, pre-K to, did we go up to 8th grade in some of those? Yes, but high school with students that have jobs and competing with the other things, I think would be hard pressed to get them to come. It doesn't mean we won't try. So that is why we haven't put forward any more for SEL right now, but doesn't mean we won't in the future ask for more funding for that. But go ahead, Amanda.
I'll wait, Susan, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to kindergarten, but if you have a question about SEL and that work, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, sort of like the STAR assessments for reading and math, are teachers going to be administering any kind of SEL assessment on their students throughout the year?
We have not identified an SEL form that we're using yet. That's some of the work we want to do with Jariel. Do we have, and will it be more culture climate, which will help assess some of the anxiety? We do have mood check in place, so that's also helping us to identify. So we have not figured out what the criteria will be for picking those students, and that's something we have to work on with the full team.
Thanks.
Johnny, did you want to add anything more to that?
All I wanted to say is Desi's done a wonderful job of supplying districts with a lot of resources. So we'll be tapping into those resources with a team that Dr. Kiska has mentioned.
I have a tool I can look into with you guys later if you're interested.
Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the SCL DEI director, I can appreciate that we want to have a focus on SEL, but I just want to make sure the DEI piece doesn't get totally lost for this year, because I think that, you know, there's definitely work we need to do around that. And, you know, I would hope that we're going to at least get a solid start this year in terms of talking about some of the changes we need to make to curriculum or might want to make to curriculum, and what we can do around professional development. And I know we have an outside consultant working with us, but I want to make sure that he has a chance to, you know, establish relationships with Diverse Holliston, for example, and all those sorts of things.
Oh, definitely. We've already set up. I spoke with our Diverse Holliston reps about introducing Joni and Jariel to them very shortly. We're setting up a meeting with them. And yes, the reason I'm having him focus more of his energy on SEL this year is because Khalees is still moving forward with her work. And we will be inviting you on our first full day PD, August 31st. Khalees will be speaking on that topic. So we'll be, Joni will get that information out to you when we have the PD schedule set, but she's coming in to speak. So he will be working directly with her. But my goal with him is focus your energy into developing these interventions for SEL, because we have her working with our staff this year, and then transitioning him to take over the train the trainer model in year 2.
Will we be able to, will he have the bandwidth to start? Because they already had a task force. Dr. Patello had already set up a task force to talk about curriculum. Will he have some bandwidth to start working on that? Okay.
Yes, Joni, I'll let Joni talk about that, but yes, we're already starting that process.
So Jariel and I have had many conversations already. So something we've tasked each other on working on, along with some other people, is making a district-wide protocol using DESE resources that we have. And I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, Hollistonizing it. That we're looking through all curriculum through an equity lens, diversity lens, and we're developing those protocols this fall. So we'll be working on that this fall. So no, we're not pushing it to the background at all. It's front and center.
And Joni,
Amanda?
if you loop Lisa and me, we're the Diverse Holliston liaisons in on that. That would be great, just because I hear from parents. I have a few parents that are really eager to get involved with a committee of that nature. So I'd love to chat with you about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're looking to start a committee of that sort, whether it's called DEI or something like that, bringing in some stakeholders to have some of those community discussions will happen as well. And that's, you know, I'm excited that we can tie all this work when we start our strategic planning beginning in October. I mean, this is as much as it's been a very stressful year, and particularly my first year, very stressful on top of it, you know, coming into district new, but I really am very excited about the work to come, because here we have this opportunity to rebuild and repair and chart a course for 5 years. And this will be the front and center of the work we need to do. So I am excited, even though it's going to be many hours, and it's not going to be fast. It's going to take time. You can't do this in 1 year. You do it. And that's why we build it out over 5 years, and we'll plan backwards about how we're going to get there 5 years from now. So I'm excited about that work. But with that, I'll just move on, if it's okay, to talk about why I am so passionate, and we are very passionate about really pushing hard to do something about the fact that we still do not have full day K funded in our budget in Holliston Public Schools. I've been working with Joni. Cheryl Lassie's been working with us all week. Thank you, Cheryl, at Placentino, only because Jamie is on vacation, or she would be in all of these discussions with us as well, and she will be moving forward. But, you know, I started thinking about, here is an opportunity that the town has these one-time funds that are available through FY24. And as a school department, we do have the majority of the budget. We hear that all the time. The schools take all the money. But the investment in our schools and our children is an investment in the town. Good schools, good communities, I said in previous discussions. So the more we put into our children and the more we do it in the early developmental years, that pays off dividends all the way through into our community. It will ultimately improve our schools to the point that we also increase our desire to move to Holliston. Real estate goes up. You know, all of these things go hand in hand. The better the schools are, the more people that want to come here. One of the things that Cheryl and Joni and I talked about this week when we were meeting on this topic is that when some of the parents that were new to Holliston or just new to Holliston with kindergartners in the school, have been not registered kids before, had the assumption that it's Holliston. I moved here because it's a great community and it's got great public schools. They were shocked to find out that we are one of very few communities in Massachusetts that do not fund free education in full day K for all of our students. It is surprising to me as well, just because I am so proud of the schools that I've come to be a part of that community. And I too was surprised when I came here that we weren't funding it. And early on in the fall, I started asking why. And I know that most of our parents, many of our parents are already paying for it, but that doesn't mean they're doing it easily. You know, some of our parents will do this because they know it's the best thing for their child, but they're sacrificing to do so. Now, add a year of COVID, how many of those same parents could have lost jobs or had to work part-time because we know that they have other students maybe, and they had to give up some of the work that they do and stay home to help the students that were home in hybrid. So many, many families that we can't even capture are probably struggling a lot more than they do, that they would admit to us, that people are proud. We also have family members in the community that may have language barriers. You know, we have ELL students, we have more diverse students coming to our community. We have cultural nuances. So you might also have a layer of families that may not understand, even if we say you might be eligible through free or reduced tuition for full day K. They may not understand what that means because of the language barriers, or they may be too proud to ask for that, even if we explain it all to them. So it's a small group of our students that do not apply for full day K. And I'm going to be doing a survey that's going out tomorrow to the parents to try to tease into the why. But bigger than the group of that small number that don't come to full day K, how many of the parents are struggling to pay for it currently? And I would argue strongly that that number is much higher this year because of COVID than it was in the past. And anything we can do to fund that within the budget and make our schools better will pay off immensely in dividends. And this is not, even though the funds are only available for 3 years, every group of kindergartners that we funded for and every family we support, that is for their entire K career, that we're giving them this opportunity to have a free education. But then also every year after, the families coming beyond them will now have a full day program for their students. And I know there are some parents, a very, very tiny number, that aren't ready to let their child go to full day K. That number is very, 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 very small. I'm going to pause for a minute because I want Joni, you had such good discussion with us earlier. I want you to talk about the percentages and the time on learning and the impact of students that you've been doing a lot of research on as well.
Sure. Let me just pull up my document here. So I was able to do a lot of digging and do some research online. And an organization called Early Education for All, that's done a lot of research regarding full day kindergarten, said that full day programs, students will spend 30% more time on reading and literacy instruction and 46% more time on mathematics than the students in half day programs. National Education Association in 2006 stated full day students demonstrate greater reading and mathematics literacy gains than those in half day classes. Teachers have more time to individualize lessons to meet differing developmental needs. That's sort of Center of Evaluation Educational Policy and Early Education for All in the Public School Review. According to Early Education for All, students perform better on assessments, decreasing the need for interventions and or retention. So that decreases tier 2 and 3 interventions that we would need to implement, needing more staff services and to buy the materials themselves. Early Education for All said allows for increased learning activities and strategies such as group read alouds, peer tutoring, mixed ability grouping, and child-initiated activities. Has a huge impact on social emotional learning as well. So Early Education for All stated that full-time kindergartners exhibit more independent learning, classroom involvement, productivity, and work with peers and reflectiveness. Remember, we're building those independent learners, those critical thinkers, and that begins in pre-K and K. The Statesman Journal stated that it increases students' interpersonal skills as they have more time to interact with peers and the teachers. Rothenberger expressed that full-time students have less withdrawal, anger, shyness, and blaming behaviors than half-day kindergartners. And full day increases school readiness, according to Early Education for All and National Education Association. And the Statesman Journal states increased instructional times allows teachers to develop deeper relationships with those students. It's critical to get to know the students and knowledge of their academic and social emotional needs, and then differentiate lessons to meet the needs of all students. And Early Education for All says that we can reduce the stress for children if we have the more consistent schedule of a full day, and reduces the ratio of transition time to class time. And Dr. Kushka, I don't know if you want to say the more Holliston data that Cheryl was able to gather. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let's hold that for now. I was going to go into that in a minute. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that really stands out to me, and I'll show the map in a second, Joni and Cheryl have been working on updating the map of Massachusetts to show where we look in the picture here. Currently, Joni made a number of calls throughout districts that were previously charging tuition, and to see where we are in 21-22 regarding tuition. So currently, we could be a little bit off. We're still fine-tuning this data, but Holliston is about one of the 31 communities in Massachusetts who are currently charging tuition for full-day kindergarten. That is out of 353 communities. So think about that. We're about 31 out of 353. So less than 10% of the state is not funding tuition for full-day K. And out of the communities, the surrounding communities that do fund it, we are an anomaly there as well. Hopkinton, Ashland, Dover, Sherburne, Medway, Milford, Bellingham, Franklin, Westboro, Southboro, Hopedale, Upton, Framingham, Natick, Wellesley, and Norfolk already funded. So we are one of a very small population and growing smaller each and every year. That is striking to me. In 2019-20, 4% of Massachusetts kindergartens were enrolled in half-day kindergarten. In Holliston, 9% were enrolled in half-day kindergarten. So even there, we're higher than where we should be compared to the norm in the state. Also, in 2021, the school year, because of COVID and all the fear that we know with safety, 19% of our kindergartens were enrolled in half-day. So there will be repercussions from that. You know, I mean, they're starting the playing field with a learning loss already, because they're not getting that additional 30% of literacy and numeracy development, as well as, let's not discount the play groups, the social emotional learning that you get from your peers, all of those experiences that happen to kids throughout the day, phys ed, art, music. What are the benefits to kids? Some kids focus their day, and that's what they look forward to all day. Because those kids are leaving half day, they're not getting those opportunities as well. So for 2021-22 right now, the data is showing about 8% of our incoming kindergartners enrolled in half-day kindergarten. But of the population coming in, and this is a number that worries me, I asked Cheryl to dig deeper. How many of those kids went to preschool or didn't go to preschool? Because they have also lost a year of experience. So they're coming in now, if they do a year of not going to preschool and now a year of half day, we're compounding the learning loss that we will be paying for later. We're going to be paying that for the full career, first grade, second grade, beyond. Typically, you identify more kids on IEPs if the gap starts to widen. So all of this just compounds. Right now, we're looking at about 16% of our incoming kindergarten class that did not attend preschool last year. Again, this is why I've identified the need to use ARPA funds. We cannot do this on our own right now. I know that Dr. Slaney and Cheryl had put together proposals in the past, and Dr. Jackson, to try to get full day K in the budget. Keith was talking about 2015. I mean, this has been an ongoing discussion. It's a big ticket item, and that's why it was pushed to the side, because it's a lot of money. But the longer we push it to the side, the longer we're paying for it later by not giving our kids the opportunities they need. And I also worry about how many of those people in the community are paying for it, but really can't afford it. And those kids are going without other things to get it. I'm going to tell you a personal story that I shared earlier at the budget sub. I don't like to talk about my personal life, but at 28 years old, I was going through a terrible divorce with an absentee parent, and my kids were 2, 4, and 9. Yeah, 28, 2, 4, and 9, raising them alone. I was a teacher in my second year of teaching. My salary was about $23,000 a year. I bought a house, I managed. If anyone said, full day K is going to cost you $3,500 a year for your child, can you afford it? I'll be darned if you would know that I couldn't afford it. I would have sacrificed, and I have sacrificed anything I could. My child would not go without. I would go without, but we would go without other things. So you have that in Holliston. You have families that are struggling to keep up, and now add the year that they've had this setback. This would do an immense amount of good for the community to start this in FY22. We have about 219, 220 students enrolled in kindergarten. They've been already paying tuition. We would be refunding that money to the community. That $3,500 a year, and some families having 2 students in there, almost $7,000 a year. Think of the good that could do for those families that have been struggling this year to keep up. So that's my spiel about that. I'm passionate about literacy and numeracy development. It starts early. If we don't fund it now, we'll never get to fund it. I think we should be seizing this moment. And I don't even know if the ARPA steering committee will vote or select board will vote. I hope they will. We'll have lots of data to share. I have a wonderful presentation that Joni and Cheryl and I have been working on. And it's real. This is a real story. Our kids should not have to go without. Our community should not have to go without. Like all the surrounding districts that I described to you, they're all doing it. If we wait till we can fund it in our own budget, 5, 10 years could go by, we could be having the same conversation. But this is an opportunity now that there are one-time funds coming to this district. And my thinking for that is in FY22 that I would ask the school committee to recommend requesting $650,000 or 100% of the additional funds we would need to fully fund full day K for FY22. In year 2, FY23, I would ask the school committee to request $487,500, which again, this is approximate each year, things change, but that would be about 75% to come from ARPA. And then we would have to come up with a plan to fund the additional 25% through the school budget, but I have some ideas for that. FY24, which is the last year of ARPA funding right now, we would ask the school committee to request $325,000 or 50%. And again, we're gradually offsetting each year, so 50% of it would have to be found in our own budget and allocated. And then I'd continue on. FY25, we would ask for only 25% from the town and come up with a plan for the 75%. You know, I have some ideas for that. By FY26, we would definitely be funding it 100% through our budget. So we would have to offset it by increased revenue in our budget that we request from the town. But also, I have some ideas that we could use some of our revolving funds that we have right now. We do keep some extra money in revolving for kindergarten for unforeseen costs each year. So we do have some funds in that account that we would save to help offset the year 2, 3, and beyond. That would not last very long. But right now we do have some ESSER 3 funds remaining in our budget. We have not allocated where we're going to spend that, yet. So we wanted to see things that might come up in the fall. but I could definitely see an opportunity to try to hold some of the ESSER 3 funds, which also I believe are available through FY24. It's one-time funds, but we have the opportunity to save it over multiple years. And then through the, the ongoing budget process, be able to prioritize this with our leadership team as well. The benefits also, it's about equity for students, right? We still have some of the haves and haves not in a community that really should be able to fund this. The long-term benefits are financial for families every year beyond, but also the students that will not have that additional regression from learning loss, that they're starting the playing field with a 30% less of their time on learning. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else I wanted to say. I just have a lot of data here that we're putting together. Joni, do you want to add anything else that I may have forgotten at the moment?
We also, we looked at data that's national data. We looked at Massachusetts data, but we also looked at national data, and the trend nationally we're looking at, just so you guys know, Biden is looking at funding free universal preschool through his American Families Plan. In 2016, 75% of kindergartners nationwide were actually full-time kindergartners in 2016. 81% of Massachusetts voters support full-day kindergarten in our state. And the proportion of Massachusetts children enrolled in full-day kindergarten classrooms has increased to 92% from 29% in fiscal year 2000. So those are just some more universal data points for you to ponder.
Yeah, and do you want me to share this? One thing I forgot was about the students that we currently have in front of us. We have some data just because Placentino does collect a lot of data over the years. And during 2018-19, in third grade, we supported 60% of students who were half-day kindergartners in either special ed, literacy, and or math support, or as English language learners. So 60% of the half-day kids versus a much lower, a very small percent of students in the general population who are full day. These same students, when they were in second grade, were supported 54% of students, and in first grade, 63%. And I'm talking just of that half-day number. Even though it's a small number of students, their percentage of need has increased in volumes. And I would say that a lot of that relates to the fact that they're getting less time on learning. In fifth grade, 67% of these students are coded through DESE as high or moderate risk level compared to 53% of the students that were not enrolled in half-day K. So, there's a definite, the data tells the story. In the 2021 school year, a greater percentage of students enrolled in half-day are reading below grade level expectations compared to their full-day counterparts, and 18% were receiving a support service, ELL, special ed, or literacy math. 14% of full day. So, it is 14 to 18, you might argue isn't a huge number, but it is a difference, and it is a telling story.
And just to clarify, those are actual statistics from Holliston.
Okay. Stacey, you had a question?
Not really a question, more of a comment. So Holliston has been talking about full day K tuition free for over 20 years. And over 20 years ago, the conversation was very different because the amount, there was a different mindset, and there were more families who were more comfortable keeping their kids half day. And then, so I've been in town for 15 years. In 2013, we had a superintendent's task force on tuition-free full-day K. And overwhelmingly, most people want the town, want to support this initiative, as do I. What we keep coming back to is we as a town want it all, and we are very conservative in how we use and spend and fund money. And so I am for this proposal, but I am concerned about the challenge it will be to maintain tuition-free full-day kindergarten after year 3. And it's a very real and very valid concern. You know, tonight, there's a planning board meeting going on for Hoppingbrook 555. And it's not about where you stand on the issue, but my point is, we are a town that has 87% residential tax base. And every time we talk about spending money, you get the loud voices who are popping up about, we don't have the money, we can't afford it. I think we need to choose to afford it. And that's where I think we need to sort of focus our efforts. And it's great that we have some fresh new faces in our district and on our admin team. And I hope that you can help us achieve that. Because I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I have PTSD from this, quite honestly. I have been talking about with the committee, we as a committee have been talking about this my entire tenure on school committee. And it's frustrating, it's challenging. And quite honestly, I don't want to correct you, but I think your numbers are I think there's fewer districts than 31 who don't have tuition-free full-day K, because I feel like back in 2014, we were maybe one of 30 districts, but I feel like that number keeps shrinking and we're still in that number. So I just sort of to share with you, our new members and our new administrators, this is not a new topic, but I'm struggling with how to overcome the challenge of how we can fund this moving forward after the first couple of years. And I fear that, we could have a select board that says, great, let's go forward with this plan. But then what do we do 3 years from now? I am concerned about that.
Dawn?
I do appreciate Susan's plan where it's 100% covered with these ARPA funds the first year, and then it's incremental. And that by being incremental, it gets worked into the budget at about $162,000 increase over a period of year 2, year 3, year 4, which works out to, a fraction of a percentage increase in the budget, I believe, from what I think I understood at the budget subcommittee. Those are all very compelling reasons. I really appreciate, Susan, or Dr. Kuska, that you're taking the time with Ms. Menard to do a survey with parents to find out the level of interest in this. Would you, if full day was your only option, would you opt to not have kindergarten? I just want to make sure we're not losing people completely, because kindergarten is optional. And I don't think that's the case, but I appreciate that we're looking at this and trying to also tease out, again, just the interest in surveying the parents and the families. I think that's a really important part. I also want to say that I really appreciate the data on Holliston. I think that one of the most compelling arguments I heard you just talk about was the fact that 60%, on average, 60% of our half-day kindergarten kids need literacy and numeracy interventions in first grade and second grade and third grade. You talked about all the way down the line in fifth grade. And I want people to understand that those interventions also come with a cost. So if we can diminish that, I think that is incredibly important. I think these are all compelling reasons for this. Does come with a big price tag. My only other, I think I heard when we were talking about the tutoring that some of the STAR assessments were done, but not done at all grade levels. I remain concerned about learning loss at every grade level for all 2,800 of our students. I'm especially concerned about our students that we're running out of time to address those needs too. So I want to make sure I understand too, how many grade levels did not have the assessments done? What's the missing piece that we're going after in the fall? Only because if we pick this, there are, and it comes with a substantial, you've made a great argument, both, with the national data and the Holliston data. I hear all of that. I just want to know what we also can ask for, like where are we with the, what pieces are we missing on the STAR assessments for which grades?
Yeah, it wasn't because of MCAS and different things. The high school was not able to do it. So the high school, that's what we're going to be doing in the retreat, August 10th and 11th, is putting together that assessment calendar. It has to be done early in September so we can pull together those groups and identify the needs. It does only go through 10th grade, I believe. it can be used. So that is the last population that would use it. So we will not be able to use it in obviously 11th and 12th grade.
Will you have MCAS data or data on kids that really you saw grades plummet in this last year? Are we also using that data to identify tutoring? We talked about tutoring and we talked about how budget subcommittee unanimously pushed forward to recommend on that. I'm just wondering how many kids that is. Do we have a sense of how many kids? Because if we pick this and it comes with a substantial price, it could impact what we can provide for tutoring.
If Joni, you have the release days that will get some of the MCAS data, right? One of those. You're muted.
I need to look on my calendar, but it should be in the next couple of weeks that we get it, the embargo data. But I do not think I will be able to drive down into individual students at that time. So hopefully it will be before school, but they have not told us when they're going to be able to drill down to that level yet.
Yeah, and one of the things that, I really think, in addition to our academic concerns, right, we know that children were struck with the trauma this year. I mean, everybody, staff as well. We're a society of traumatized people, and trying to rebuild and repair and build capacity in social emotional learning is important as well. That's why I really think it's important within the school day to identify what interventions can we do pre-K to 12 all the way up. We have a really great group of adjustment counselors and counselors. Jariel himself is a licensed social worker. So we have the capacity to do that work. We have the people in place, but we have not identified the what. How do you impact a larger amount of students? You need to do that more in a small group. Kids that have identified as similar adversity or struggles, you put them in similar groups, therapy groups together, versus right now we're doing a lot more one-on-one. I'm not suggesting there isn't a place for one-on-one. We do have students on IEPs that are identified for some one-on-one services with adjustment counselors. But truth be told, a lot of the work that we should be doing with students should be done in more of a whole group situation, small group, and into the classroom, embedding it into classroom programs as well. That's what I really want the focus to be on this year is, are there some interventions we should be developing or even purchasing? There are programs like Second Step, Response to Intervention. What I don't want to do, though, is try to add something on top of and put more work on people. We're trying to find ways to embed this in the work that we're all doing so it doesn't look like something on top of and more stressful. This is something we should be doing throughout the school day and then also in tier 2 and 3 intervention. So that is going to be a huge focus. And I should be able to have Jariel present on that early in the fall, hopefully, what he's been able to start planning for the school year with us.
Just wanted to let you guys know I did find it in my calendar. The MCAS early release, the embargo data will be on August 10th. But I'm not quite sure if that will move or not, but as of right now, that's when it will be. But we will not be, I don't think we'll be able to drill down. It's going to be more of a district-wide how we did, not individual students.
I also worry that because of COVID, there were kids that didn't take it the way they normally would. So it's going to be hard to tell how accurate that data and how useful it's going to be. Maybe it will be, but I think there are some kids that would in a normal year would have done their best at it. And there were some kids that just shut down and didn't complete it. So it may not be a true measure of their academic success, but more of their social emotional well-being at the time.
Okay. Lisa?
Just going back to kindergarten for a second, I just dug up the task force report from 2014. Stacy was chair of the task force. I don't know if you even remember that at this point. I mean, I'm still on the fence about this because I'm worried about the idea of a fiscal cliff and the possibility that we might get to year 3 or 4 and have to make cuts to continue offering free full day K. That's really that's my main reservation. Plus the concept that, this would have to be most of what we would get out of ARPA for this year. You know, if we got this and the before after school tutoring, that would be probably as much as we could hope to get. But just in refreshing my memory on this task force report, I think, there's a lot of pros to offering full day K, obviously. But one of the things we didn't talk about is how much things have changed in terms of what we expect of kindergartners. And I know this won't be news to most of you, but just because we haven't talked about it, there was this great addendum to the task force report from 2014 that talked about how dramatically things had changed between what a kindergartner was expected to do in Massachusetts in the year 2000 versus the year 2011. And there were specific, a lot of specific examples on both literacy and numeracy. But, for example, you were supposed to be able to count to at least 20 in 2000. By 2011, we expected children to be able to count to 100. So this idea that, I think some people will think, well, I didn't even go to kindergarten, or, 30 years ago, I only went to half-day kindergarten. But, what we expect of kids has changed so dramatically. I mean, just in that short time period, that was only an 11-year time period, and now things have changed, I'm sure, again, even more so in the last 10 years. I wish that I wish the state had helped us with this, because I feel like they're really driving it. It's standardized tests and having to get ready for standardized tests that's forcing us to check off more boxes for our kindergartners, and I do feel like it's really on them to a huge extent. But I mean, that being said, I think this initiative is really important. I just hope that we can really consider it in the context of other needs. And I think this is a hard decision. I think this is a really tough one. It's a fantastic proposal, and there's so many good reasons to do it. But I think it's tricky given all the needs in the district.
Sorry, Catherine, and then Minnie.
So I just, still on kindergarten, have a question about, and maybe you don't have an answer for this yet, but wondering a little bit about this kindergarten schedule and the way that full day, if we offered full day, how or would that change the way that the schedule is now? Because right now, all of the specials and recess and everything is in the afternoon, and all the learning is in the morning, which is by design. But I wonder and worry about some of the specials getting moved to the morning and taking away from the instructional time, since there would be that leeway. And if that is the case, then we're starting to lose out on the prime learning time for the younger ones who already have the latest start time and are getting inched later and later. So I part of it is a question that I think you probably maybe can't answer yet, because it's a scheduling question. It's something that would worry me, that if the specials and the things that are very good for our kindergarten's SEL development start getting moved to the earlier time slots, and the more academic pieces or the extra support get moved to the afternoon, we know that's not a good time for kindergartners to be learning. So how would that be approached?
Yeah, certainly for FY22, the schedule's not going to change, because they've already done the schedule. They have it mapped out with their specials. They might have some tweaking to do, but they're not going to blow up the schedule, because as some of you probably know, the half-day kids go into the regular classrooms, and then they exit at a certain time. And as Catherine described, the second half of the day, they're doing a lot of their specialists and other parts of the day with their instructional leaders. So the schedule for this year certainly wouldn't change. And I know that this is certainly a passion of our administrators at Placentino. I hear exactly what you're saying. We know that our younger children, they tire more in the afternoon. They're just adjusting to a full day in kindergarten. So to have them switch that schedule up, I don't foresee that would happen in the future, but I certainly would have that conversation. For FY22, certainly wouldn't change right now, because they already have the schedule mapped out.
Thank you.
I would also like to add, there's a lot of social emotional learning going on in specials. I mean, there's a lot of learning period going on. A lot of special teachers will embed some of the standards, the gen ed standards within their classrooms. As an elementary school principal, I saw that happening all the time in kindergarten. So it's a common practice for specialist teachers to embed the standards. So standards are being addressed in the special classes too.
Yeah, and to your point, I do worry about the fact that some of our students, for whatever reason, they're not going to full day K. They're not getting the music and the art instruction, the additional, they're missing out on all of that additional peer interactions. Recess has value. You know, there are standards happening at recess that playtime is so critical. So our students that exit at the half day, maybe they're not missing their literacy and numeracy skills, but there is literacy and numeracy that happens within the playtime and in the little social groups that go on as well. So as Joni pointed out, even though it's not the specific blocks of English, ELA, and math are not happening in the afternoon, they're still losing out 30% of their instruction in literacy and 46% in math based on the activities that happen in the second half of the day.
And please let me be clear, I'm in favor of full day kindergarten. I just finished paying for it this past year. But I think that the schedule of the youngest people, if we're going to start spending money in order to make this happen for them, that's a concern of mine, that they would then be trying to learn academics in the afternoon, which I actually don't think is a great way to spend funds when funds are, as Lisa said, this could be a huge chunk of what we are actually allowed to ask for. Still in favor of pre-K, of K being all day, but it's just something that came up for me.
Minnie?
So just kind of piggybacking on all everyone has already said, but as an early educator, I can vouch for the fact that full day kindergarten probably is the critical factor in early learning. And the difference between kids who go to half day versus full day is enormous. And it's visible. And the demands that the expectations from kindergartners has actually increased since 2011 to 2021, the last decade. Actually now going into kindergarten, kids are expected to read, believe it or not. It's kind of like some school districts even have evaluations where they place the kids accordingly. So it's really critical that, we look into it. My question is that how would the transport be affected by this? And if Holliston, are we prepared to take on that portion? Because I know school start times have been such a critical issue in the past couple of years. So that is also something that I would like to have some light shed on.
Yeah, I think we actually might, I'd have to double check with Keith, but I think we would save a little money on transportation because we would be eliminating the bus run in the middle of the day. So the same amount of kids would be in the morning, those kids are already on the bus. In the afternoon, there's just less kids on the bus because they're going home midday. So it would definitely not cost more because the buses are already distributing the kids at just less in the afternoon. But I think it might save us a little in that midday run. It would take one run away for all of those kids.
Amanda?
So thank you, Joni and Susan, for doing all this work. You're really preaching to the choir, I think, for most of us as far as the importance of this, the equity issue, all that. Also, it's good to know, I feel very confident that the financial data on this has been sort of flushed out because I know Stacy did that task force a few years ago. My husband was on it. So I guess my question is just this, yes, is a giant priority for Holliston, a giant priority. My question is more with the ARPA funding, do we know, I know we don't know exactly the dollar amount that we can ask for that will be given to the schools, but if we are to prioritize full day K, is that going to be it? Or are we going to or that in the tutoring that you guys have already voted on in the budget subcommittee? Or do we think we're going to be able to look at other ideas also?
Yeah, because the money is coming to the town over 3 years, and even for this year, they suspect that right now for the August 2nd meeting, they'll be starting to receive just the things that are high priority needs for now. Some people might put something in that they may not consider a priority need for now and they'll consider later. But for this purpose, we need to prioritize it right now because we need to do it for this year. So therefore, that's why we're putting so much data together so that I'll be able to present that to both the ARPA board and to the select board so they can have that in place and decide for the community, is this a priority? But when you think about that, for 220, well, how many did we say? It was 209, I think, families have paid for tuition already. So think about that, $3,500 for each of those children back in those families' pockets for this year right now would be a huge thing. And maybe some of those children, the parents that are, you know, they can do it, but they're struggling a little. Maybe some of those children would also be able to have other opportunities of enrichment outside of school, because now that frees up some money for those families. So I think it also opens the door for these families to be able to get things for their families that they've been needing and lacking, and COVID has increased that. So in addition to, this is why I'm proposing using ARPA funds, because I think I know we need to do the full day K. In absence of ARPA, I don't know how this community is going to get there, given that you've been trying to do it for so long. So I really worry if we don't seize this opportunity and fight for it now, what is the backup plan? What's the plan B? Because what I'm hearing is we can't possibly put $650,000 in the budget this year, next year, the following year, and so on and so on. So to me, the best case scenario is to stagger this for the town and get us to absorb it slowly. I think this is the best case scenario for all of us. It gets what we need for our students, but it's also, it is what ARPA is all about. It's an American Recovery Plan Act to help communities, help families, and support them. So to think about almost 200 families getting a benefit like this, I mean, we're hitting, I think, every box that ARPA is trying to help moving forward, but it helps the school committee avoid this cliff of saying, okay, now we're going to ask for $650,000 in the first year and then every year beyond.
And it's 200 families this year, but it's 200 families, like, it'll compound over year, over year, over year. So I think it's important for us to, you know, to look at it from a larger, big lens. And I think that we certainly can't get what we don't ask for. So if we put it, we may request it, but it may actually not be, you know, whatever, the select board may choose not to support that, but we can't get what we don't ask for, I don't think. Sorry, Lisa?
Yeah, I do think it's important, though, to put some real numbers behind it. So to answer the question, the amount that the town is expecting for the current year is $1.54 million. If you do the math on that, you know, we're generally around half. You know, it varies by a little bit, but that's $750,000. So if you add together what we're asking for full day K plus what we're asking for this tutoring program, you're up to around $750,000. So, and I think we all need to go into that with our eyes wide open, because we have talked about other uses for this money. We, you know, referred to that at the beginning of this meeting. We have talked about other ways that we could use this money. And I think it would be hard to, I mean, we could ask for whatever we want, you know, we can ask for, you know, whatever number we want. But in terms of, you know, just looking at the hard numbers, I don't know that we'd be able to get a lot of other big ticket items if we asked for a full day K.
Dawn?
I do want to, and Cynthia, you're the ARPA steering committee representative for the school committee, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I do want to say, I don't like this idea that we're thinking it's $1.5 million, $1.5 million in funds, and we should only be asking for 750. I would say to that, the schools have been disproportionately impacted by COVID, and we should not be just agreeing to the fact that they would only get 50% of what's available in these funds, especially when we're looking at things that will bring greater value to the town. One of the arguments I think I understood Dr. Kuska to make was that if surrounding communities like Bellingham, Medway, Ashland, Milford all can offer full day kindergarten and we do not, then we are not drawing in those young families, which are home buyers. So I think that this does give value to the town. So I absolutely would not agree with the premise that we should, because our budget is this much of the town's budget, be limiting ourselves. So I think that we absolutely need to start. If the committee as a whole agrees that this is one of our priorities and our asks, as is the tutoring, that's not it. We do have other things that are critically important, including looking at the the premium pay for essential workers and how the federal government is continuing to define that and working out more and trying to understand that more. And I also have to thank Dr. Kuska, because I came up in budget, that she is looking at other communities to see whether they're pursuing that as well. So we do have other very important other things that we might be asking for, and we should not be limited at 50% of it. And that's going to be, I know you'll be a strong advocate on that, Cynthia. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will take all the money we can get. Just for the record, I am not saying that we should limit ourselves
Right,
to 750. I want to be very clear about that.
Okay.
I just was, ballparking what, I think our minimum would be. And yes, I'm all for asking for as much as we can reasonably advocate for.
Dr. Kuska?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody too, the letter that Cynthia read earlier about the select board. When the school committee asked for them to fund, what was it, 500 and something, 563,000, is that what it was?
$533.
533,000. The select board didn't bat an eye. They did support us. They are getting the value of this. Their work, I came on new, so I can't speak to the past. I know that there was a good working relationship with both the finance committee and the select board already, but they have supported almost, I think, everything that the school committee has asked for this year. That's a really good sign. They are hearing the need, and they are seeing this as a community that needs to support education. So I think this is a really good time to have this conversation with them.
Okay, so I just want to be mindful of the time. It's 8:42. We still have to get through our update about the fall opening, that we all had questions about that. So I think we're at the point where I think we need to take a vote on some items that we would like to move forward for this. Again, this is the first bite at the apple about requesting ARPA funds for the August 2nd deadline. And that's, again, because of the priority that we have for these things that are time sensitive. That doesn't mean that we're not going to bring up more and discuss this further in another meeting, in the next meeting, in the meetings subsequently. And we can provide the ARPA steering group as well as the select board with any other supporting documentation that they may need to make that decision.
So Cindy, is the motion then because I'll make the motion, but I just want to make sure I make the right motion. Is the motion to request via the ARPA steering committee the two recommendations brought forth tonight by Dr. Kuska, and that way, we can use whatever her language is on it, because I don't know if I took the notes correctly. So you tell me. That
works for me. So I should say for the free full day K proposal, as well as the before and after school support.
Can I just add multi-year proposal, because we would want to give them lay the whole thing out.
Yep.
Okay,
Multi-year proposal.
Can we add to that with the stipulation that we will potentially also maybe be asking for some other things also?
Oh, we will be, but yes.
You don't have to put that in.
It doesn't have to be stipulated. Okay. We'll vote for more stuff. Don't worry.
So moved by Stacy.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor, roll call vote. Mrs. Raffi?
Yes.
Ms. Bigelow?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Ms. Gupta?
Yes.
Dr. Savard?
Yes.
And Mrs. Listevnik, yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so now I'd like us to move on to our fall opening update. I'm going to throw it back to you, Dr. Kuska, again.
So, I am getting already a number of emails. I'm actually surprised that emails have been very busy the last few days. It has not really slowed down in trying to respond to so many people, but families have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions. It's frustrating that here we are, July 29th, which is actually my youngest son's 28th birthday today. I haven't seen him, but he got a cake last night and a gift. But anyhow, it's frustrating because we're in a somewhat of a holding pad. We don't really know what the guidance will be from DESE. The governor has not weighed in yet as to what his thoughts are for the fall. He has been commenting how things are better in Massachusetts and much of the country. That being said, you probably heard the CDC weighed in and are saying that indoors, and specifically school staff and students should be wearing masks. And they're saying that that's even if they are vaccinated, because even if you're not going to catch it or catch it in a way that maybe you're asymptomatic, you can still transmit it. So you could carry it as a vaccinated person to an unvaccinated person. And another concern I have is if we were to say that unvaccinated people have to wear masks and vaccinated don't in the fall, how are we supposed to know that? And how are we supposed to police them? What a nightmare that would be. And then what are we going to do? Discipline students for not wearing a mask? You know, I mean, this is just to think of the time we're going to be in time and energy when, you know, I liken this to when my son played baseball. At one point when he was playing baseball, he had the helmet on his head. They had the helmet for when they were batting, but they didn't have the face cage, and the ball hit him in the face and he was a bloody mess, and he was a little boy, and I didn't want him playing baseball again. So when they told me we were moving towards the cage on the front of the baseball mask, not one parent, including myself, questioned the safety of that decision. Why wouldn't we keep our child safe, you know? So here we are, we're in a pandemic. Even though we're doing better than we were last year, we still have these unidentified strains coming through, and some that are identified that we really don't know the ramifications of. So I foresee that we likely will be asked to wear masks in the fall, but we aren't able to make a decision on that until we get more information. I think at some point a communication should go out to parents in the very near future, just saying where we are right now. And at some point I'll be coming to you through policy to see what policy you want to put in place, because we did rescind the previous mask policy. And then that puts us back to what the CDC, state, and DESE are recommending. And I do suspect they will give us some more concrete guidance as time goes on, but people are, you know, waiting to see, you know, where it's going to transmit, and it's a very uncertain time. Overall, I hope if we do move forward with the decision that everybody wears masks in the fall, that we see this similar to what I mentioned with my son playing baseball. I very much knew that I wanted to be safe. And then when he played in other sports, he had to wear cups and all kinds of protection. In football, he wore, you know, the guards, and soccer, he had his shin guards. No one ever questions why we're putting these uncomfortable gear on our students to play sports. The mask is similar. It's protecting the safety and well-being of our students. So I hope parents who are resistant to that, if the decision is that we are all wearing them in the fall, will understand it. To me, it's the same thing, safety of our children. So I can't tell you, I don't have a crystal ball what the ultimate decisions we've made. I hope we get some information soon, but certainly the guidance is leaning towards mask wearing versus no mask wearing. And I suspect that might be the outcome that we'll be asking you to put back into policy for at least indoors. I'm not hearing anything related to distance yet. We're still hearing that distance should not be an issue, which is great, because we're telling our principals to plan for not having to put the distance factor in place. That being said, if we are unmasked for lunch, which we would have to be, we may have to have a plan for spacing for that time of the day. But again, that guidance hopefully will come soon.
Catherine, and then Minnie.
I lost it. It'll come back to me. Sorry.
Okay. Minnie?
So I've been working with young kids all through the summer, and I haven't had a single case where I have had a child who would not wear a mask or is not wearing a mask, or a parent who is even remotely concerned. In fact, it was during the pandemic that I had one parent come in and say, I don't want my kids to wear a mask because this is all fake. Just one parent in that entire time. So my question is about, actually, I think you answered it, but with the transport, again, back to the transport. So if you're going to say, if the social distancing comes in, are we is the transport going to be an issue in that case? And because I know we are not going back to hybrid, hopefully, touch wood, but how would that thing be concerned? Have we any plans for that?
No, Dr. Joseph Allen has been speaking all year. He's out of Harvard. And even most recently, he's spoken about the fact that when they transport on buses, opening windows, the airflow back and forth has not been what people considered a concern. I also did not hear of any cases of transmission related to bus exposure for that reason. So I don't suspect that that would change for spacing on buses. I do suspect that they would likely have to wear their masks on the buses if we end up moving back with masks for everyone.
I'm sorry, Catherine, and then Amanda.
Thank you. Dr. Kuska, is there any indication, like I'm assuming that the mask mandates and everything will come from DESE like they did last year. But then we keep seeing all these indications of, like the moderate risk, the superior risk, that kind of thing. Is there any talk or any thought that this actually would be our decision, that there would, like, this could fall to us? Because in the past it hasn't. We have to go along with what DESE says. But the maps and the sort of compartmentalization of where the risk is, I wonder why they're spending so much energy on that right now. And I wonder, do you think, maybe, do you have a crystal ball with you? Could you tell us if you think that this is going to be our decision, or will it still be a DESE decision that we follow along with?
The governor so far sounds like he's not willing to make a decision. So it could come down to local decision. And it also could come down to the Board of Health in Holliston. If you remember, if they mandate something, then we are having to comply as well. So we won't know, hopefully sooner than later, but I think we're going to be probably dealing with this well into August just because of the last minute details that are changing.
So quickly. Okay, thank you.
Amanda, and then Dawn.
I guess maybe this is not our decision either, and I'm asking you to look into your crystal ball once again, but some other questions are going to be as far as close contacts with students, but also with teachers. Will we be dealing with that differently based on CDC guidance that's different for folks who are vaccinated and those who are not vaccinated? And if so, how are we going to deal with, since there's no remote option, please, there will be no, like, how are we going to deal with substitutes? Do teachers have to take 10 sick days, et cetera? Is that going to be something we'll have to discuss?
When we went down to the 3-foot distance, even though 6 foot was still the close contact criteria that we were looking at, what we were told in the spring was that if you are fully vaccinated, you would still be identified as a close contact, but you would not have to quarantine. So I would imagine that would be what would continue going forward.
Sorry, Dawn, you go and then I'll ask.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Wanted to bring up, I did see in the Metro West Daily News that the Framingham School Committee wrote to, I believe it's the governor and DESE, and said, we're looking for more guidance and we're looking for it soon, right? And I would suggest that maybe we do something similar to that in the next 2 weeks if we don't have strong, there's a lot of money and planning that goes into this. We may want to join in on something like that, requesting additional guidance and requesting it expeditiously. Because I remember, it was like being on a roller coaster last summer when the guidance would come out, especially as it changed just, so shortly before we opened the doors. Other part that I wanted to bring up was we will have an entire, population of kids, 3 to 11, that will start the school year without vaccinations. Are we doing any, the tents are gone. I would love to see pricing and know that if we had to, we could bring that back. I thought we had also, with some of our CARES funding, obtained additional chairs, tables, things of that nature. Is there any way, that was actually one of the silver linings of the pandemic, I thought, the ability to bring kids outside and have them learning outside. So I'd like you to strongly consider whether we could have anything like that set up for especially our unvaccinated population. I think kids benefited from it at all levels. I know the high schoolers, it was a huge stress relief to get a little sunshine and fresh air for your lunch period, but is that something we could consider doing, since I think we have some of those resources through the funding, meaning like the chairs and tables, but look again into obtaining those tents, outside classrooms, outside fresh air for lunches.
What was interesting about, many times when I was riding around in the spring and they weren't using the tents as much as I thought they would be, because when the weather was nice, they were just enjoying the fresh air. On the rainy days, I don't know if they went out as much as I would have liked to get to the tents, So as much as the tents are a great idea, I'm not sure that they're getting as much use as we would have thought. I think if in my perfect world, we would build some outside structures that were more permanent rather than paying thousands every month, and then have something that we could use. Because I do agree with you that I think we've changed how we educate students, and teachers are now used to spending more time outdoors and bringing the lessons alive outdoors. And we've done better with getting our infrastructure on Wi-Fi so that they can access sometimes the Wi-Fi at certain parts outside, not everywhere. So yeah, I think thinking about outside places for students to go is a good idea. I would like that to see a more permanent versus a temporary structure that can blow over in a heavy storm.
Well, we still have unfinished business with the flag field, everybody, so can start that conversation. The other thing I wanted to ask was about surveillance testing and whether or not we were going to consider getting additional, rapid tests or something of that nature, in bulk, ready to go to help us through the year.
One of the concerns I had, I know you all heard how hard I pushed that. Every communication that went home, I kept sending the data, I kept sending why we should be doing the ongoing testing. Our percentages were not strong at the end of the year still. Some classes had 10%, 20%, some had 30%. Our one grade level got up to, I think, almost 40%, but most grade levels were under 20% or even less. So when you have low numbers like that, it doesn't really act as a good mitigation tool. They really recommend 70, 80% of people were doing it, then it gives you much better data. So yes, it was nice to have, but I don't know that it was giving us as much information as we would have liked, just because people were resistant to taking it. And that was unfortunate, because here we had this resource. And we also, we did have the rapid test that we could do, and we still do have that. So that might be something we would consider. Again, not knowing where we'll be in the next months, I might bring that back to you, but given where we are right now, I don't think it would be necessary to start in the fall for sure, but it could be something that in the future.
Minnie and then Lisa.
So forgive my ignorance. I probably haven't been able to figure this out, but we expect the parents to submit a record for vaccinations like every year. There are certain vaccinations that the kids have to have when they come to school. So why could we never mandate the COVID test for, coming to school? That's something that I have struggled to understand. So is there something that I missed? Because I thought that would be something.
That's the vaccine, Minnie. The COVID test or the COVID vaccine?
COVID test, not the vaccine. I mean, because vaccine is not available yet. And I'm guessing, hopefully, that, they'll mandate it along with other vaccinations when it finally comes out for kids. But I was just trying to figure out that why is it something that we could never really mandate for students to come in if we could mandate other vaccines as essentials for them to attend school?
Yeah, we discussed this with the Board of Health. I think that would be a route to go, to have the Board of Health make that decision, because they are anytime you get the people who are the health experts to make these decisions, I think we have a better chance of success with them as well. So that would be what I would suggest, if that was the direction the school committee wanted to go, that we work with the local Board of Health and they decide, because they might decide to ask that for other employees in the town as well at some point.
Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to push back on pool testing a little bit. I know that we never got the numbers that we were hoping for, but it did identify some pockets of people that we wouldn't otherwise have known about. And I feel like something is better than nothing. And I'm particularly concerned as we go into the fall with the Delta variant. We know the Delta variant is more contagious, and we still have this, we don't know much else about it, but we know it's more contagious. And we still have this large group of kids who can't get the vaccine yet. So I feel like pool testing is something that we might want to consider having, at least for the unvaccinated portion of our school population, if nothing else, although I think it can be beneficial for all the grade levels to some extent. I don't know, I'll let others speak to that, but I feel pretty strongly that, at least for the younger schools, it's an even more important tool now that, we don't know how much distance is enough to prevent the Delta variant from spreading.
And we could consider doing it, as you indicated, just for the younger population. But if it's voluntary, then it's the enforceability of it is a problem. So I think what I was hearing Minnie ask is, does the school committee want to make it mandatory, and/or would we do that through the local board or just through the school committee? The local school.
I would be on for either way, because I think that probably would be the best way to go, because I mean, if you leave on to just, I mean, nobody wants anything stuck up their nose, let's face it. So I know my son was so against it, and he's big for vaccine, but he's like, I know I don't want that. So I was like, you need to get it. It's not something that you shouldn't, but well, he was 18, so I didn't have much say over him, but I think mandate would really work well, even with these kind of kids who think they know everything.
I just want to point out, similar to concerns, Dawn, you had mentioned earlier about if a parent doesn't want a child in full day, then will they opt out and things like that. I will say, given some of the emails I've received from parents, some parents are already saying, if you're going to mask my child, I'm not sending him to your school. Similarly, you could see that happening if you're going to stick a swab, which I know is very simple and quick, and the kids kind of laughed about it once they got used to it. But there are some parents that, and we don't have any remote option if they refuse to come. So, when remote will not count, as of right now, the commissioner says it will not count. The only students that it might count for is if it were per a 504 or an IEP, and that would be a very tiny, tiny population of children.
I'm wondering, well, it doesn't seem like, I don't know if Governor Baker, I think it'd be easier to have Governor Baker mandate vaccines for 12 and up. And then, we can all be preparing for vaccine clinics as they become available and approved for kids aged 5 to 11, which is they're, estimating in, late October, early November. So wouldn't that be an easier thing than having to try to do the rest of it, I guess? But I mean, those are beyond our control, unfortunately.
Well, Joni just pointed out that the commissioner is telling us that we're going to have a meeting tomorrow about masks. So I may have some more information, but talk about Lacey notice. We're getting this
right
at 8:00 at night to tell us that we have a meeting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Amanda and then Dawn.
This is quick, but I just want to point out that we can't really mandate testing because of kids with sensory issues and stuff like that. So I don't think that can be a thing.
Dawn?
I wasn't talking about mandating it. I was just talking about having it available. Even if we don't have good participation, I'd still like to see it available for the younger kids.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you. So I was really pleased with last October that we were able to put together a flu vaccination clinic at the schools. And I know that was a tremendous amount of work between Lynn Bowler and Dr. Kuska and others at the school. But I think that that was very helpful and remember where we all were last fall, where in Massachusetts, they said the flu vaccine would be mandatory. And for working parents who are trying to get their kids in to get those flu vaccines, that opportunity on a weekend with a drive up at your local school, registering in advance and us communicating out that information, I think that was very helpful. I would love to see that happen again this year in late October, early November, and maybe both. And maybe we could also think about, in addition to the flu, if we are scheduling this for something like early November, talking to whatever, I think we may have worked with Walgreens last year, if I remember, or it could have been Rite Aid, but talking to them about if this is opened up for the 5 to 11 crew, is there a way to do that as well? Maybe we set it up at 2 different schools, but I'd love to see some communication and set up with that moving forward and get a date on the books for families.
I will tell you, just because the nurses do have access, and actually Chief Cassidy sent us the percentages. Our students 12 and up are vaccinated. They are very high numbers. So, I mean, that's really good news. So if it does get released for younger students, and that makes perfect sense to try to get something on the premises like you described.
And of course, with the Board of Health. because they may be running their own too, because last year they didn't run a flu clinic, but I'm guessing they'll be making sure to do that this year. Anything else? Okay. I just have one item of information for the school committee. And that is that we're trying to put together a procedure where everyone makes sure that they have a current Corey on file. So I need each one of you to make sure that you go into central office before the beginning of school to make sure that you have a form. I'm going to forward this to you by email, but you have to actually present yourself in person with your identification so that they can run your Corey, and that only has to be done every 3 years. So, but we want to make sure that we are up to date on that. It's not something that we've normally done as part of a procedure, but most of us volunteer at some points in our schools anyway. But I'm also mindful of the fact that Minnie no longer has kids in the schools, so she would also, that captures her as well. So that's my only other item of information. Also, our next meeting date officially right now is August 26th at 7 p.m.
Cynthia, I'm sorry,
Yes.
you reminded me that because school committee members are considered employees of the school district, even though I know you don't get paid, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but because of that, I would think that we should really get ethics training done as well. And some of you might do it in other positions and could just forward your certificate. We'll be sending that out in the fall to all staff, so I'll make sure we get that out to you as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, I have no other items, so I will ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Moved by Stacy.
Second by Dawn.
Moved by Stacy, seconded by Dawn. Roll call vote, Mrs. Raffi,
Yes.
Ms. Bigelow,
Yes.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Dr. Savard,
Yes.
Ms. Navorsky,
Yes.
Ms. Gupta,
Yes.
and Mrs. Listevnik, yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.